Well, welcome everybody to Came to Believe Recovery's weekly Recovery live stream. I want to welcome my co-host Alicia Martinez from somewhere in California. Where are you from now?
I'm in Meadow Vista, but we're moving to Auburn this month.
Auburn.
So it's Northern California.
Alicia moves all the time. I think she should just keep wheels on her house so she
We
can
do.
move around.
Super fun.
Well, we got a great show for you today. We have a special guest coming on in a moment. And we're going to have a great conversation about a wonderful program down in Arizona. And we want to hear all about the In Balance Academy and what they're doing and where they came from, and see how what we do matches with what they do. And let's just talk about what is happening in the world of helping people that are coming from all different backgrounds of issues and how we can help. We have Kips Bay coming up, Alicia.
How's that
And
going? It's the
well,
last weekend of August,
it's the
correct?
last weekend of August. Of course, as our gang, as usual, our gang is slow to be signing up, but I have a lot of promises here as I'm running around New York City with all of our advocates and people that are going to be coming. So I'm going to be shuffling them all onto that registration here in the next week or so. I looked down at my calendar today. It's August 1st. I can't believe it. We're like halfway through the summer,
It's crazy.
and it goes so fast. August 1st already. The days are getting shorter already. It's really this is starts my worst part of the year. Short days. I like the long days.
Oh no, I love it.
You know,
I love this time of year.
it's just one of the things that we don't agree on.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, back to August 1st though. Good news or bad news or sad news, we did 200 push-ups every day for the month of July, and I'm kind of happy that's over.
Yeah.
I was a little over it, and we got to figure out what we're doing for August. I think I'm going to do 1 mile run every day, but we got to hone that in.
Yeah. I
That's
can't do that because of my hips. So
I know
guys, if you care, we actually made it 10,000 push-ups.
because in June we did 100 a day, in
Yeah,
July 200 a day,
200 a day.
and
And
now
then yeah.
we're not doing 300 a day.
Yeah, 10,000 push-ups, guys. It was, and I'm kind of glad too. And while I was doing it, it's a lot of push-ups. It
It's
takes
awesome, but it's just like I'm ready to
Well,
move on to
I'll
something
tell
else.
you what, I went to the climbing thing Saturday because, guys, we had a climbing event with a few of our partners here in New York City and Brooklyn on Saturday, and we were climbing. I mean, I
I
went up
bet
like
you were like, woo, 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 woo,
like
woo,
Spider-Man, right? It was
because of all
strength.
the push-ups we
It
were
was all the
doing.
push-ups. I just went up and down. Yeah, no soreness, nothing. Yeah, it was easy.
It's so
So,
great.
and that was a great event, guys, and it's great for us to start getting even greater awareness with other organizations within New York City as we are beginning to expand and bring programming into the Big Apple, as we have been already, but we're expanding into Manhattan, and this is really exciting over these next couple of months as we take Manhattan. And then we're back out in California again for September, and in December in Malibu, we're up and down the coast. So the fall is going to be really busy and exciting with retreats, one a month at least. Um, so if you're in the New York area, anywhere in the New York area, and you're wanting to come and see what we do, experience the 12 steps the way the founders did them in a very short period of time. We actually do them over a weekend. Learn about why they called themselves recovered. Maybe you can be too. Learn about how the steps were done back then. It might be the key for you. We know it's not the answer for everybody, but it could be the answer for a lot. What we hear the most is it can't be done in a weekend. And then they say,
How
why
come
didn't anybody ever tell
I
us this?
this before?
Right.
Well,
So we
yeah,
want to bring it. We want to be a tool in the toolbox for recovery. We want people to know that this is one of the options. And so that's our big rallying cry. And our vision is to end addiction, and our mission is to spread the retreats as far as we can, based on the way that one of Dr. Bob's sponsors did it. We have it right from the mouth to our legacy guys. So if you're interested at all in hearing about it, go on our website. It's the Kips Bay Retreat. You can click on for more information and register. Come see us. It's a commuter retreat, so you come and go home and come and go home. So it is kind of focused on New Yorkers only, because it'd be tough going in and out of the tunnels. Some of you guys that don't have tunnel issues, Arizonians and Californians,
I don't even know what that is.
there's tunnel issues coming into the city. which I had today. It's this anxiety, and Cass knows in the background not to talk to Tom when he's driving into the city. And Alicia had to sit through it when Tom was
Experienced
in
it.
meltdown.
And he did
driving.
his step 10, and he's been
Yes,
working on it.
I'm better. I'm better now.
So that's good.
Although
It's a process.
Sean saw the minor melt. He thought it was a meltdown the other day when we were riding through East Village, but we're better. All right. Well, without further ado, you got any other announcements? Did we catch everything, Alicia, that's going on?
I think so. For what's coming on soon, yeah.
For what's coming up soon? Yeah, we're going to be in Nevada City again in September, which is probably our best accommodation retreat. Then we're going to be in Schooley's Mountain here in New Jersey, which is a resident retreat. So if you're in the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut metropolitan area, it's very much open to you, Pennsylvania. And then we're going to be down in Leesburg, Florida at our flagship retreat center. And then in Malibu, guys, December 8th, we're going to be over the hills of Malibu, looking out over the water. We're going out
virtual, right? January.
And then a virtual in January. We'll grab everybody right after that New Year's and see if we can grab some people. So without further ado, let's bring our special guest on today. I want to welcome from Tucson, Arizona, Patrick Barrasso, the founder of In Balance Academy. Welcome, Patrick.
Hey, good morning.
Hi
good
there.
Afternoon, depending on where you're at.
That's right. Tom's in the afternoon almost, I think.
It's evening for our UK followers.
Okay.
So, yeah, we have somebody from UK on right now. So somebody from West Yorkshire, UK. So we have a big following, Patrick, in the UK. I don't know if you knew that, but we have a big part of our program goes on in the United Kingdom.
That's awesome. We have 2 kids at the academy right now from the UK. So
cool.
Yeah, we're CVIS certified, so our school is, so we can take international students.
That's great. Well, Patrick, because Sarah was reaching out and looking around for programs and things that are working, helping people with recovery and other issues, and she came across your academy and she brought it to our attention, and then she had a discussion with you, and so we thought it would be great to bring you on and let our viewers and our listeners in on what you're doing and where did it come from and how did you started the academy right back in 1996?
Yeah, so thanks for that question. So yeah, I started, it's a long story, but I'll kind of shave it down into a short story. So in 1981, I made a decision that I wanted to work with young people. So I had the opportunity to start volunteering in a program for young people that didn't have dads that were in trouble with the court. I had worked, so I started volunteering, great program. I was allowed to take kids out and go fishing and do stuff and just be a mentor to them at a young age. And at that point, I was in my early 20s, and I was hooked. The first young person that said, hey, I think I've made a different decision about my life based on something maybe you've said or something that we've done together. I said, I really want to commit the rest of my life to this endeavor. And that's, now I'm 64. So that's been pretty much what I've done. So I started I'm a licensed clinical social worker. So I started private practice in 91. I had a general practice, but I found that of that practice, I had young people that weren't getting better, and those were the young people that represented those kids that had mental health and substance abuse. And so I said, I need to develop programming for this particular subset of young people because they really need programming. So I opened up an intensive outpatient program in 96 called In Balance. And the idea in mind, I started to develop the program of the academy actually in my last year of grad school in 90. And we opened the academy, which was always the vision for those kids that couldn't get sober at home because the community just didn't support the level of acuity that they were at. I developed a model for what became In Balance Academy in 2004. And we've been from there, we recognize that after a year-long program, we have a fully accredited school. We have 9 clinicians, all cross-trained in substance abuse and mental health, family systems, 36 horses. The first time I was allowed to use horses with young people was a group of young people that were referred to the court that were in gangs. Essentially, as a gang kind of prevention strategy, or at least a diversion strategy. And I saw the difference it made for them. 1997, and I said, whatever I create, I'm going to bring horses as part of it. And I studied and I studied with some people across the country, and learned all about how horses can facilitate healing, and especially in young people. So we opened up the academy in 2004, and that gave rise. I recognized that some of those young people would not be able to go home because their home wouldn't support their recovery. And so we opened up a transitional living program in Tucson, Arizona. So the academy is kind of high desert, 123 acres. Kids will be there about a year. We serve kids from all over the United States and the UK, and all over the place, really. But you know, it's a big endeavor because they need mental health, they need substance abuse treatment, they need fully accredited school so we can help them get their high school diploma. Most of our kids will go on to college, so we really want to prep them for that endeavor. We've always used a strength-based approach, which in 2004 was kind of foreign. You know, we use what's called a positive peer culture. The founders of that are Larry Brentro and Harry Varath. Harry Varath has since passed. But in their intro, they said the biggest positive peer culture in the universe is 12-step recovery. So I knew that as soon as that model was a model that spoke to me, because it was young people helping young people and bringing out the best in young people, as opposed to, you know, this assertive behavioral approach to young people. It was like, we see you, we know that with purpose you're amazing, and we just have to find that purpose, and you will be the best wounded healer that we can provide. And so from the very beginning, we didn't do any sort of behavioral interventions. There was no, restraints. There was no isolation. It was just completely strength-based approach. And again, in 2004, that was a unique perspective because, when I was going through grad school, I worked at the juvenile court, and obviously that was a very different environment. So I felt strongly I always show up in that space with respect and care and knowledge and data, and implement best practices, and your kids will do well. So we have a transitional living program in Tucson where kids will go to after the academy. Some kids will go home. They'll do a robust, we've got a great 12-step community in Tucson, Arizona. It's kind of well known, actually. You probably know that. And so kids get swept up in community-based 12-step recovery, and they get really excited about it. And many of them are either working or going to school. We have a collegiate recovery program that's just for those students at the U of A that really don't want to get into the party scene, but really want to further their recovery. So it's right by the U of A, 14 young people. We partner with the U of A and started Wildcats Anonymous. So we have a big AA presence on the campus there now. When I say big, it started with 3 and now it's 60 to 90, and so, when football season starts, we'll do sober tailgate parties at our place. And, and now we've just opened up an adolescent transitional living program, which is real exciting for 14 students that will go to public high school that we partnered with and continue their process of mental health and recovery as they are in a community-based setting.
So much, Patrick. So impressive what's going on. I have so many questions. I'm sure Alicia does too.
Oh my God.
But just to get clear in my head, you have the academy and then the outpatient clinic are separate.
That's correct. We have the academy that has an outpatient or has a clinic, obviously.
Got it.
And they get their school, they live there, and they get the recovery work. And then in Tucson, and our intensive outpatient program, Tom, has been around. Again, we opened at 96, so that's kind of the older part of our continuum. The Academy 2004, our Transitional Living Services 2008, our Collegiate Recovery 2012,
Got
and
it.
our Adolescent TL. We also have a big sober living community right by the U of A, a sober dorm.
Sober dorm, that's awesome. The academy, can some people go to the academy and go home and come back every day, or are they all stay?
They all stay.
They all stay.
Yeah.
And this is high school grades. What grades are covered? Whatever grade they're in?
So our youngest student right now is 14, and
Okay.
our oldest student is 18. So they can enter the program prior to their 18th birthday by state guidelines, but we can't take an 18-year-old. And
Okay.
so, they can turn 18 in the program. And so some young people, and they all live there because there's only
Okay.
a few people from actually the state of Arizona. Most of the folks are in California, in New York, in Chicago, some from Canada, some from the UK. So from all over the United States. Now they live with us, and then about every 3 months they'll go home and they'll put in practice all the things that they're learning while they're on campus. They're going to meetings. We have meetings on campus. We have meetings in Sierra Vista. We have meetings in Tombstone, Arizona, one of our favorite meetings.
I would imagine.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Alicia, if you got a question. I'll keep going.
I have a lot. So the one that comes to mind first is, how do the boys, do they apply? Do you take everyone? How does that process? How do they
Great.
get?
Yeah. So how they get to us is, most of our young people are coming from another program, a primary care facility. We are not primary care. We are a therapeutic boarding school. So, we don't have the capacity, for a kid that had, maybe went into a psychological or a psychosis or something, something real serious. So we are, parents all over the country kind of hear about us through mainly referring professionals, therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. We, quite honestly, we do little to no marketing. And so it's just referral. We'll get a young person's psychological testing. We will vet that to make sure clinically they're appropriate. All of our kids have a few things in common, but they all have one thing in common, is that they've all really lost their way with drug and alcohol use.
Okay.
They also all have in common that they have co-occurring disorders, ADHD, anxiety, trauma. So we have a very specific trauma-based program. So those young people will be referred to us. They're in another program, and then we will evaluate. We'll talk to the therapist. We'll talk to the parents. That process takes about 3 weeks. And we want to make sure that we are the right fit for every student, because what happens with adolescents, and it often breaks my heart, is if it's the wrong fit, then they're doing program after program. And for them, any way we couch that, they feel like a failure. So we want the academy to be the place. And most of our kids, truth be told, have done multiple other interventions. They've done individual therapy. They've seen a psychiatrist. They've done intensive outpatient. They've done day treatment. We have some ability to work with insurance, but we are mostly private pay. So these are families, that have gone to great lengths to try and find a solution that's not quite as intrusive as a 12-month program where they live in a therapeutic boarding school.
So go ahead, Alicia. Do you have follow-up?
No, go ahead.
So it's very interesting. And Cass and I, we were all talking behind the scenes that you do not consider yourselves a rehab, and you're not a rehab. And there's a reason why you don't call yourselves a rehab.
Yeah, so
You know,
back,
in the traditional
yes,
traditional model of someone's go and they go into rehab, you know, which is what people think, you know.
yeah, and I think we don't. Often when you hear the young people talk to their peers, of
Yeah.
course they're like, "I'm in rehab."
Right.
Um,
Right.
so, as we define different levels of care, using whatever criteria we want to use, then therapeutic boarding is not necessarily referred to as rehab. Now, does that make sense?
It totally makes sense. I mean, I like therapeutic boarding has a much more positive um, connotation to it. You know, rehab is I'm terrible. I'm coming. You know, therapeutic boarding is no. I'm growing and gaining and power. It has a much better thing
Yeah.
sounding to it. I like that characterization much better from someone. If I was going, I'm not going to rehab. I'm going to therapeutic boarding. Like I would rather go there.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It sounds like they're going to help me and not just get me, you know, cleaned off the drugs and alcohol. So that was clear too. I wasn't sure. We weren't sure that everyone did have drug and alcohol issues, but they do. That's
They do. So we get requests, Tom. We feel incredibly fortunate that our reputation throughout the United States and in other countries is positive, and they see the model as really exactly what a lot of parents are looking for. But we get requests probably weekly. My kid doesn't have any drug or alcohol issues. They're more behavioral, or they're super depressed, but he's never used drugs. And those aren't students that would feel comfortable on our campus, because they would kind of feel like maybe they don't belong, because we do incorporate a lot of mental health treatment, like 22 hours a group a week. But it's also really, we're asking you to come join us to consider using 12-step recovery as part of your continuing care plan, so that we can help you, because we all know that is as good as I think that we are, and I do believe that it's a comprehensive approach: family systems, mental health, self-esteem, academics. We know that the post-discharge environment is the most important piece of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
You can be as wonderful as you can be while the young people are with you, or adults, but if we can't set them up for success when they leave us, then they're going to most likely fail. We feel strongly that 12-step communities offer that stepping stone. And we do use a different approach to that with adolescents. And I can speak to that if you find that interesting.
So we'll definitely want to talk about the 12-step approach and what we do and what you're doing, because there's probably certainly crossover. And it's very interesting to hear other ways that the 12-step approach is being used. But we find, Patrick, a couple of things that you said that were really interesting to me is I wonder if when I was 15 or 16 and I had the opportunity to come to an imbalance, that I wouldn't have thrown 30 years away on drugs and alcohol, being able to get something straight when I was younger. I often think that could have short-circuited the addiction and set me on the right path. It might have. I don't know. So I think it's just wonderful work, and you're saving lives for sure, and giving people wonderful, probably successful and happy lives as they go forward. It's really inspiring what you guys are doing down there. So no adults at any point in the program, nowhere, no one. If I said I want to come, there's no part of your program that's for adults. Do you see that one of these days?
I think there is in the transitional living part, right? It goes up to age 28. I think I saw on the website.
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct. Yeah. And then on our campus, which is awesome, is that we have these really intense family weekends where the families will come out and they'll spend 3 days with us. And, that's fun because, we get a lot of parents that have looked in the door of recovery, but really haven't considered it seriously. And I can tell you at least 300 stories of parents that have gotten sober as a result.
Uh-oh. He froze. There he is.
Yeah. Okay. And so I was saying that we get, parents that will be inspired by the courage that their young people are showing. And back to your point about 15, not probably like many people, I grew up in a home where, I watched my mom die of alcoholism. And so I really did want to break the generational transition. So when I chose in fact, I was asked this, I did a presentation on Saturday that many people from across the U.S. came to. And I said, I really want to break the generational, how that gets handed down. And so I chose to go all in on adolescence. And now 19 years later, with the Academy being open 19, I'm seeing the answer to my prayers. I'm seeing our alumni get married and have children, and they're sober, and those children are having a different experience in their households. And I suspect that it may break their children, having to go down that path. And so it is exciting for me to work with this population, and challenging. I mean, I love them, and they're hard. That's why most people would prefer not to do it.
Yeah. The other thing that I really resonated with and totally agree with, and it's one of our challenges, is the aftercare. It's the follow-up, it's the fellowship, it's the community after, even through our program, which is very short, and we got to talk about that in a minute. We want them immediately connected with other people that are going through the same thing and that can support them in a community at their local level, which is AA meetings. Basically, it's meetings, it's came to believe type meetings. Solution-based meetings is what we really recommend people to go to. People that are talking about living in the go, as we call it, talking about solution, talking about how they're taking their lives back and reinventing themselves, as opposed to just whining and crying about stuff. So we it's a challenge for us, and we're trying to set up those meetings everywhere that we can after we run retreats. So that's the success for us, we believe, is that if we can do just much like you're saying, the success rate goes way up if they get into some fellowship and some community right away and get connected to something that they can have support with all the time. So we're in the same, we're thinking exactly the same. But let's talk about the 12 steps, because that's really all we do, Patrick, is we run, I don't know how much you know about what we do.
Not a ton, to be honest with you. So I am super interested. It's interesting because and I'll say this to you, and it may resonate with you, but when we first opened up the Academy, there was a guy in Tucson that our students became involved with as they transitioned. His name was Wally P.
Oh,
and
yeah.
He used to do back to basic workshops, and we've lost touch with him, but our students loved it. They'd come in on a Saturday and a Sunday into the outpatient program, and they'd, do the 12 steps in 2 days. And it was wonderful. We
know Wally P. He's been through our retreats. Some of our founders know him very well.
I've completely lost touch with him. He's from Tucson, I think. But I mean, I literally have, it's been, I don't know, 12 or 13 years, maybe longer.
Wow, it's a small world, brother. Wow.
Yeah.
So what we do is our founders, 4 of the people who helped found Came to Be Recovery, and all we are is an organization that presents the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. We don't have our own program. It's not something that we made up, but 4 of our founders of this nonprofit that we're involved in now we're sponsored by Clarence Snyder, and Clarence Snyder was one of the original 40 members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and his sponsor was Dr. Bob, who is the co with Bill Wilson. So Clarence was sponsored by Dr. Bob, and Clarence is accredited with much of the success that the Cleveland groups had in the Midwest, all at the beginning, the first 10 or 15 years. Not so much the New York contingent, which was the Bill Wilson element. And, it's pretty well documented that even Bill Wilson would admit that the Cleveland contingent had better success than the New York contingent did. And they held to the principles, that came out of the Oxford group. And I'm sure you know all about the origins of where the program came from.
Yep.
So what we've done is Clarence started these retreats in 1966 because he saw that AA had gotten what he called watered down. And they had gotten away from doing the steps. The program today, some people say, I'm in the program. And we say, well, the program is the steps. So you mean you go to meetings? It's not the program. And so our big mission of ours is to change that language, Patrick, and say, come do the steps, then join our fellowship. And that's really the way it was designed to be. And that's what they were doing back in the 30s. They took them through the steps and then had them in the fellowship, in the meetings. They were never allowed in the meetings until they went through the steps, actually, back then. So Clarence started these retreats to bring it back. And then they grew, and he kind of commissioned, as it were, Steve Foreman and Jack Rapp and Dale Morfitt, 3 of the guys he had sponsored, and their wives, to begin spreading these retreats around the country and around the world. So from like 1986 on, Patrick, we grew to a point where we were running like 40 retreats a year around the country and in the UK, right? COVID took our legs out from under us a little bit, as you can imagine. And we're coming back again. But we run these weekend retreats where we run everybody through the 12 steps in a weekend. And what we do with them is we take them through 1 through 9 once, which is what really the intent was, and teach them how to live on 10, 11, and 12. And then we launch them off on a Monday, learning how to live in that 10, 11, and 12, which is really just practicing the 9-step process they learned and putting it into a daily routine that will allow them to grow. It's not a one-off. It's not a one and done. It's a one and keep going. So they come through the weekend and then off they go. So that's what we do. And we've been doing it with great success around the country and the world for 50 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
So we realize now as we're growing that we want to be a tool. We just want to be an option, Patrick. When people look for recovery, that we just want to say, there's this too. Because there's a big group of people that come and they grab a hold of this. And just like they did in the 30s and 40s, very quickly, they get it. And they never drink or drug again. And they get their lives back. In my case, I got a college degree, a master's degree, all of this after I got sober, going through the program. So that's what we do. I'm really interested to see how that compares with what you do. We do have the spiritual approach. We do tell them who the God of the founders was. And without being overboard about it. But we also feel like we'd be irresponsible not to at least let everybody know who the God was of the founders. And then there's an openness for them to connect with this, which has nothing to do, by the way, with the church. So it's not a church that they spoke. It was a relationship with a God.
Yeah. And I think that, when we look at our young people, some of the differences, and Tom, you'd be interested, both of you, I think that, when I started, I was speaking on a national level. I'd been asked by U.S. journals and Faces conferences and some other folks to come out and talk about adolescent co-occurring disorders. And so I was grateful to do that. And, at that time, programs would then have, say, hey, could you come out and take a look at what we're doing and help guide some of our treatment plans and our model. And I felt honored to do that. So I would do that. And what was happening is that they were, taking some of their best adult providers and putting them with adolescents. And the problem with that is adolescents are very unique, and they're a very special group of young people, and they have very special brains. And we have to show up in that space that's appropriate for where they're at in life. I can't take, my mother's program that she never quite was able to get her arms around and impart that upon a young person. So first difference that you would notice on our campus is kids don't have to identify at the beginning, in the middle, or ever as an addict, so they can come on. And so right away, a kid will, I see a lot of the kids upon admission, they'll be like, hey man, like this isn't going to work for me because I'm not an addict, and you can't say I am and you can't say I'm not. I'm like, yeah, you're right. I can't. So I'm not interested in identifying whether you're an addict or not. What I know is that drugs have somewhere along the line created some obstacles for you that are really challenging right now. And what I'd like to do, if you decide, and only you can decide, to not use for a day after this program when you go home or wherever you go, if you decide one day beyond the academy that you want to stay without the relationship with drugs and alcohol, I want to introduce you to a community that's going to celebrate that. And so there's not going to be many places at 17 that you're going to go that people are going to high five you around not using drugs and alcohol. So I'd like to at least have you look in the door of it and see if it's something that you would like. And then we're going to introduce you to the 12 steps and some of the material that go along with that. And we're going to introduce you to alumni that have been successful in their lives using this community, either for a while or forever. But there is no obligation to make a commitment right now that you'll never use drugs or alcohol again, because that's too big at 15 or 16. So it really is that one day at a time philosophy, really focused on adolescence, because it can't be any different. If I'm 40 and life has beat me up, I know pretty well that I can't use again. But if I'm 16, I'm holding out hope.
That's true, right?
And so when I say we invite them to the table, so we'll go to the Fellowship of the Spirit conferences all throughout the United States, and we'll take all of our students in groups of 12 to 14. We do an international trip. We'll do meetings in Cape Town. We'll do meetings in Machu Picchu. So we're inviting them to the table, and that's the language that we use to be able to connect with this fellowship that's free and that's everywhere. I mean, literally, we did a meeting in South Africa that was in a language that none of us recognized, even our guides. And yet it was in a very impoverished area where we were doing service work. And yet our kids knew exactly what they were saying. It was kind of cool, right? So we really do kind of roll into it that I'm sure, maybe I'm not sure, but one of the guys I follow as I age is Peter Attia, and he's just written a book about longevity, and it's a pretty amazing book, and he's a pretty amazing guy. But when they look at longevity studies, and if you know anything about him, he's a deep dive into data. He doesn't say anything unless it's backed up by really significant good data. One of the things that they can say for sure about people that live long and healthy lives is they have a community that they're connected with. Community and exercise, right? So those are the only things we know for sure. Your diet may or may not play a role, but the two things they can say that are backed up by the data is connectivity. And we know that, right? So we know that young people, just like all people, they need to feel connected on a human level. And so we really help mentor them in 12-step recovery. We don't just, to your point, say go to a meeting. When I was a probation officer, and I was for juvenile probation, we would court order kids into meetings, and it wasn't very successful because they didn't have a mentor. We couldn't help them, sort of understand. In fact, in my presentation Saturday, you might be interested in this, that I talked about going to meetings alone. Chai et al. And some other data talked about going to meetings alone is helpful, but not as helpful as feeling part of the community. So they've got a really good study that looks at, even if you set up the chairs or you collect the money for coffee, that those people consider themselves part of a community as opposed to just on the outside looking in. So little things that you can do, to feel purpose in that community. If you read program literature, you're more likely to be successful. If you consider yourself part of that anonymous group, as opposed to I'm just freaking going here because the court ordered me. So all these things that we're helping, getting a sponsor, all the things because it's more than just, going to meetings. So our kids really, we do a really good job, probably. I'm proud of that, of saying we want to interest you in this, not tell you who you are or what to be.
We meet, one of our big efforts is to meet the least, the last, and the lost, we call it, and to meet people where they're at. So we make a big effort, Patrick, to let people start from wherever they're at in the parameters of coming into recovery. This first step says we're powerless over alcohol or drugs. It doesn't say I'm an addict. And I mean, they don't even use that kind of wording. It's powerless. I mean, is there something you can't control? Is your life unmanageable? Let's just talk about that. And without a label, right? And while we might label ourselves recovered, I'd rather label that than an addict, right, for the rest of our lives, to be recovered. The one thing that we don't do is we don't work with anybody really under 17 or 18. I think, some of those things that you're saying about how you have to just approach it a little differently are things we could learn from, because we don't get people of that age coming to our retreats. It's mostly adults. So I'm just talking here because I'm wondering, it's a whole different thing when you have minors and people under 18 coming, and in a thing for us, we'd have to have parents coming and all, and you don't need that, right? I mean, they sign them in and you're able to expose them to and bring them through your program because they sign off, and it's all, I guess, what you'd call legal.
That's correct, Tom. And parents are actively involved from day one,
okay.
Through therapy and then through the retreat,
And Clarence used to say, family got sick together, family gets well together. So that's another crossover with us, is we are open to the families. So the families come to retreats, the mothers, the fathers, the sisters, the brothers, coworkers, everybody. The more people that know and more people that understand what everybody's going through, the better success, just like you're saying. Getting in community, getting everybody on the same page, getting everybody understanding and supportive of each other, just the success rate chances go way up. And that's why we have such an effort now, and it keeps me up at night in getting our people into fellowship right away, because they're off, they leave, and what are the chances, right? I love that you say they're holding out hope. Well, when you're 16, you never know. You're thinking, I'm going to go through this and maybe I'm okay. And, maybe some of them are.
Yeah.
Maybe some of them find that they needed to deal with some things, and they can go on and live a life where they can have 2 drinks. I don't know what that is, 2 drinks, but I would imagine that you have some stories like that, but who cares if they go off and they've been straightened out and they're normal, right? I would imagine.
That's correct. Yeah, because again, our students are complex. Like, we have kids that are, like real smart, and we have kids that are really challenged, have some learning difficulties. We have kids that have minor trauma. We have kids that, have watched their dad in a car accident die in front of them when they were trapped in the back seat. We have kids that have been bullied, because of maybe some gender identity things that they were dealing with in middle school, and they've been bullied terribly. So our young people are very complex, and they're wonderful, because when they get better, and they do, they start to feel a sense of, like I can do this. And so some of those young people, drugs and alcohol absolutely were a coping mechanism at a very difficult time in their life. And we know the data, right? If you start, using after age 21, now we pair that with the brain research, we know that you're less likely to become dependent. So if we could put all kids in the world, and we couldn't, we wouldn't put them in a hopper and say, you're not going to use drugs or alcohol until after your age 21, we would see the incidence of addiction go way down, as you know. And we know now with the brain research that the kids even using a couple times a week are fundamentally doing some pretty big damage to their brains in adolescence. And that damage may, render them more susceptible to developing full-blown addiction in adulthood. Addiction is a young people's disease. It's a young people's, if you do all the research, most people that we know started using when they were 15, 16.
Yeah.
It's a rare bird that started after the age of 21. In fact, they think it's like 0.001% and developed dependency. So it really is a young people's disease. And so if we can get in there while they're young and help them with some of the other areas of their life, it may be the case, Tom, and it is the case. We have alumni that are doing quite well, and they call me, and I love them, and I don't judge them, and and Patrick, I got married, and I'm doing well, and I drink a couple times a week. Now we don't, at the academy, we don't highlight that necessarily.
Right.
I don't want to confuse young people. We're asking them to consider that not using drugs or alcohol could actually be a pretty cool life, and that they could be happy. And so those are but if a kid asks me, hey, Patrick, later on in life, could I use successfully? I'm not going to lie. I'm going to say, I don't know,
right.
Maybe.
But I think you're right. The idea, you wouldn't be telling them we're teaching you how to use, to teaching you how to do it moderately. That's not really what we're teaching.
That's not where we're at.
Yeah, Patrick, it's interesting. Last week or 2 weeks ago, we interviewed Nee Addy, Dr. Nee Addy. He's a neuroscientist at Yale University, and he's doing brain research on addiction and how the neuroplasticity and how the brain can be switched. We're in conversation with Nee Addy about how the brain works and how it can be rewired and how it works in addiction. And I'm trying to get him to come and do a study on what happens when people go through the 12 steps with their brain and how is the chemical, because something's happening. But so very interesting, and we're open to all that too. And while we know that there's a spiritual element to this, it all fits together.
Let me say one more thing before we move on, if I could. There may be folks out there. There's a cool nonprofit that was started by a courageous woman who had a son that struggled mightily. And so she's an alumni parent of our program, and she started a movement that's pretty awesome. It's called Other Parents Like Me.
Oh, yes, we know her. She's been on our show.
Okay. And she's, for a parent out, we love, she's one of my heroes. So you talk about a small world. But
she lives right near me.
I really invite parents who are lost, because having a child with drug and alcohol abuse and mental health at 15 or 16, it's pretty horrible. You feel pretty alone, and you feel scared. And being part of that community, as well as Al-Anon and some of the other self-help communities, is really in my heart is the only solution, because you just don't, it feels so alone. I've worked for, since 81 with parents and shown up in spaces and been to more funerals than I'd like to share. And it just feels so alone to have, and there's still the stigma, Tom, and Alicia, I mean, let's be honest, we've come a long ways, but there's still a stigma about people that suffer from mental health. and substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and so, you know, people like you breaking that stigma, showing hope, getting people better. People like Casey that's, you know, that's spreading the word and helping parents not feel so alone. It's all really good stuff in a world that's
Patrick,
pretty crazy.
and I don't, we still hear once in a while that it's a lifestyle choice. Some of us think that we chose. I said, I chose to throw 30 years away. I mean, I chose the first drink, but after that, I didn't have a choice. So, Patrick, we've got to touch on something because Alicea and I are, I'm sure she's dying to touch on this. Alicea and I, as you probably picked up, are pretty huge exercisers and 10,000 push-ups in 2 months. And we are huge advocates behind the scenes of total wellness, health and nutrition and exercise, because it's been such a big part in us getting better and feeling better about ourselves and being strong and all sorts of positive about that. So can you talk to us a little bit about the influence of exercise and how you guys go about that exercise and nutrition, and how important is it in your program?
So Tom and Alicea, one of the fun and unexpected parts of the model that I developed was that when we opened up the academy, I'm a clinician, I'm a licensed social worker, and so my bias is through looking at the clinical issues that are happening for young people. I'm also a kid that has a pretty significant learning disability, and it created all sorts of acting out for me when I was in grade school and high school, and including trouble with the law and running away and all sorts of stuff, so that people didn't really know what was going on for me and why I couldn't learn like other kids. So I want a strong academic component. Physical fitness has always been part of my life. And so when we first opened, it's just me and my wife. We didn't have a lot of money. We had these rinky-dink donated dumbbells that sat out under an awning and got rusted. But one of the first things we brought in was a life coach. We call our direct care staff life coaches, to implement a physical fitness program. This is a long answer. Then we built a CrossFit gym. I would say of the alumni, including one that I presented with on Saturday, we have seen about 80% of them, and I'd say it's probably higher, really go home or go to college or go to their next placement working out 3 to 5 days a week.
Nice.
So we have a gentleman now that runs our CrossFit program that's also in recovery. We also have our operator, who's an alumni of our program. He's kind of second command at the academy. Really, it's just an inspirational guy, and he made physical fitness a big part of his recovery, and the kids look up to him. So we just feel like it's like number 3, like family, community, and physical health, and so we have our kitchen is, really, now when kids get to our transitional program, they're eating, Hot Pockets and burros, and we still try, and because now they're living life as a young college student or as a young person in the community, but they'll gravitate back towards what we, kind of what we help them realize at the academy, mind, body, spirit, that if they take care of those 3 things. But we are, in fact, I didn't know how well I'd do on this because I do a 2-day fast a month, and this just happened to be on that second day. I haven't eaten in a while, but so far it's going okay. So
I love that.
We're perfectly aligned with, the physical fitness, and it's really one of those things. I thought the kids would gravitate towards the horses. I didn't know how big our physical fitness program would become as part of the overall recovery. Our kids in our transitional living program all have free membership to a really cool gym, so it becomes sort of a community activity. So I'm all in. I am all in on.
Good. I wanted to mention too, I used to work at Centenary University College in New Jersey. Centenary is a big equine university in the United States, and they did therapeutic. They trained equine therapy. So the students were there at the school training for equine therapy. So I have some exposure to what that's all about when I worked at that university. It's out in Western New Jersey.
Yeah, what's cool about what we do is our kids will become, excuse the language, badass riders.
Cool.
So it's more than just kind of hanging out. Not that that's not cool or helpful, but my developmental background, one of the psychosocial stages of adolescence is purpose and power. Power is defined as influence. Do I have influence over my environment? Most of our kids don't, because they're been beaten up by life. So, man, when they start to have influence in a relational way with a 1,200-pound animal, that they're doing events and they're riding and they're developing that relationship, there's something that happens with their self-esteem that's pretty magical. And anybody that that rides, when they get done riding, they feel like they just accomplished something more so than, even going to the gym or something. They've done something that not a lot of people can do. And that's get a 1,200-pound animal to respond and to listen to them. So it's a big part of our program. They're in equine 3 days a week.
Wow.
Well, that's like a mic drop. Well, Patrick, we're near the end here. I mean, we could just keep going. This is like one of the shows I wish we ended. I'd love to have you come back and talk some more. I know that we're going to get a lot of follow-up from people that are going to watch this. I'd love to offer anything we can help in the Wally P category. We'd love, if there's anything we can do with what we're doing and it matches any, we'd love to, off camera, talk to you some more about what we do and more. I'd love to come and visit your academy one of these days.
All that's available. Yeah,
perfect.
I'd love to partner with you when you guys come to Phoenix and send some of our young adults to your weekend.
Yeah, we do it in Prescott.
Okay.
So not that far. We've been doing it for years.
We go to Prescott all the time.
Yeah, Prescott is where we do it yearly. This summer we didn't do it, but we do it normally yearly. So let's stay in touch, and I'd love to have you back if you're willing to come back. We only about halfway through. I know Alicia still had a lot of questions. It's 2:00. We got to run. Patrick, thank you so much. Have a great rest of your week.
Thank
Alicia,
you.
have a great week, everybody, and we'll see you guys next week on our next edition of Recovery Live right here.
Bye, Patrick. Thank you.